Did you know that Band-Aids weren't that popular when they started, and they almost plummeted until the Boy Scouts mothers got involved and it skyrocketed from there? Well, Jeni Jackerson is our special guest today, and she will be telling us the story of how Band-Aids came to be. The title of the book is The Boo-Boos That Changed the World, a true story about an accidental invention. Really? The author is Barry Wittenstein and illustrated by Chris Sue. Once upon a time, in 1917 actually, a cotton buyer named Earl Dickinson married his beloved Josephine, and the two of them lived happily ever after. The end. The story's done. The story's finished? That was the shortest story ever. You've got to be kidding me. There has to be more to this. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not done yet. Oh, can we do this again? So actually, that was just the beginning. The newlyweds expected to live a quiet life in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Instead, Earl and Josephine ended up completely changing the world, one boo-boo at a time. You see, Josephine was accident-prone. She often bumped and bruised herself while working around the house. But that was nothing compared to how often she injured herself in the kitchen. That was far worse. When she sliced and diced an onion, she sometimes sliced her finger too. Ouch! When she grated cheese, she sometimes grated her knuckle. Boo-hoo! And when she lifted a hot pot off the stove, she sometimes burned her hand. Ugh! After Josephine winced in pain, she quickly grabbed a rag to stop the bleeding. But the bulky towels between her fingers, it was even harder for Josephine to hold a knife. She became even more accident-prone. Impossible, you say? It's true. Josephine's klutziness had become a bloody problem. Every night when Earl came home from work, he looked forward to talking with Josephine and eating the wonderful meal she had prepared. That was until he saw his beloved's hands. Yikes! Her cuts might get infected. He had to help his new bride. Earl's father was a doctor, so Earl knew a little bit about boo-hoos and bandages. And luckily, he worked for a company that manufactured hospital supplies. Earl knew there had to be a solution, but what was it? Earl thought, while he shaved in the morning, maybe if Earl thought while he bought cotton in the afternoon, then I could... And Earl thought some more while he lay in bed at night, and that would solve... Finally, a light bulb went off over his head. I've got it! Earl yelled with excitement, waking up Josephine. What have you got? She asked. The bloody solution, of course, Earl replied. You see, the word bloody actually has two connotations. It could be used, of course, as a blood solution, or it could mean a good one. So that works for the Band-Aid and a good solution here. The next morning, Earl tried out his idea. Step 1. He took a long piece of adhesive tape and laid it on the kitchen table, sticky side up. Step 2. Earl cut small squares of sterile gauze and stuck them on the tape, every few inches. Step 3. He placed a material called crinoline on top of the adhesive tape to keep the whole strip sterile. It's perfect, Earl said proudly. Now all Josephine had to do was cut off a piece of the longer strip and put it on. She didn't need anybody's help. She needed only one hand, and it worked. At last, they lived happily ever after. The end. It's done? It can't be that short. Are you kidding us? Oh, come on. Oh, but wait! Here comes the part about how Earl and Josephine changed the whole world. Earl guessed there were probably hundreds, possibly even thousands of people who could benefit from his new invention. Earl and Josephine, they thought about making the bandages themselves, but they soon realized it was too big a job. Earl told one of his coworkers about it, and the coworker encouraged Earl to meet with the company's president. At first, Earl's boss, James Johnson, wasn't quite sure Earl's idea was good enough. Earl demonstrated how easy it was to put the bandage on. Then Mr. Johnson saw his own light bulb. The company agreed to produce and sell the product. So they went ahead and combined the words bandage and first aid to create the clever name of Band-Aid. Now Earl and Josephine would surely live happily ever after because Band-Aids were guaranteed to be an instant success. And with that, we have come to the end. Thank you and good night. Oops, not yet. Sorry. That first year, Band-Aids were made in a factory. It was a slower than slow process, and only a small number could be manufactured by hand. They came rolled up and were 18 ridiculous inches long and 3 ridiculous inches wide. And they still had to be cut into pieces. Earl, Josephine, and Mr. Johnson had high expectations. But the Band-Aid boxes collected dust, ignored and unwanted. A few years later, the company invented a machine that could mass produce thousands of bandages. So instead of the user having to cut them up, each one was ready to go. Band-Aids were now about 3 inches long and 1 inch wide. Oh, and they were cute too. Each one had a little red string to pull in order to open the paper wrapper. Success! Band-Aids flew off the shelves. The end. No, not really. Unfortunately, even with the cute red string and the convenient size, the public wasn't sold on the idea. Mr. Johnson knew there had to be a solution. But what happened next was truly a stroke of genius. The company decided to give the Band-Aids away. Mr. Johnson wondered who needed self-adhesive bandages the most. And then the light bulb went off again. Did you know that the idea of a light bulb actually originated in the 1900s from a cartoon or a comic called Felix the Cat? That was the first time it was put on paper. And the reason behind that was Thomas Edison's invention of the light bulb and it being a good idea. So we could give away the Band-Aids to the Boy Scouts, of course. All those fall down, climb up, scratched elbow, scrape knee boys got plenty of cuts. It didn't take long before the mothers of those rough and tumble boys saw just how handy these bandages were. And that did it. Earl and Josephine's invention was a smash. During World War II, the company sent millions of free Band-Aids to the brave soldiers fighting overseas. In the years that followed, Band-Aids were made in different sizes, different colors, and designs. Some even had pictures of cartoon characters on them, and that continues to this day all over the world. From boisterous hot dog vendors in Brooklyn, fancy French winemakers, tired taxi drivers in Denmark, and English bobbies on bicycles, to daredevil skateboarders in Saskatchewan, king crab fishermen in Alaska, sweaty Ugandan soccer players, and applauding audiences at the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow. The sounds of ahai, wah, and ouch echo still, but not for long. Here are different signs from around the world for hurt. Because soon those snivels and sobs of pain are silenced by Earl and Josephine's accidental boo-hoo invention, and that is the happiest ending of all. The end. Really. Are you serious? Are you really done? You are? Okay, thank you so much. So the story in the book is done, but Earl's life story isn't done yet. Johnson & Johnson hired him as a vice president, and then he became a member of the board of directors. His salary was increased too. He and his wife had 2 sons, and then in 1961, at the age of 68, he passed away. 8 years later, his wife Josephine died at 72, and they were buried together in New Brunswick, New Jersey, where the whole thing started.